We have a quorum, so I'll call to order. So welcome you to the Wednesday, January 17th electronic meeting of the Airport Advisory Committee. The meeting is being held remotely and will be conducted similar to any in-person meeting. Public comment is via telephone only. To speak any of the public comment opportunities, please call the 887 number, 887-853-5247, or the 888 number, 780099. Here in the meeting number, which is on the public agenda, but it's 530-745-4665, and on the public site. So the call order, next thing is a roll call. To compliance with requirements of the Open Meeting Act, the airport manager will call out, we'll do roll call, and each voting member in remote attendance will answer present, and will include where they're calling from, municipality and state is fine. This information will be used, included in the minutes.
Member Ferris?
Ann Arbor, present.
Member Faulkner?
Ann Arbor, present.
Member Briggs?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Member Watson?
Present in Ann Arbor.
Member Perry?
Here, Sal Township.
All right, you have a quorum. You're good to go.
Thank you, sir.
Matt, one thing, I'm going to switch to my desktop, so Matt, let me in.
Yep.
I'll wait for you to switch. I want you to miss any.
He's coming in now.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Next up is approval of the agenda. Any changes? See anything we need to do on the agenda for this week? Nothing. Entertain a vote for movement to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second, someplace. Anybody? I'll second it. There we go. Vote in favor of approving the minutes as they stand. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opposed? Have it. The ayes have it. Approval of the agenda. Next up is approval of the minutes from the meeting of November 15th.
Move those.
And
Second.
second? Okay. All in favor of approval of minutes from November 15th, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So approved. Approval of minutes from the 15th. Hop over to the next part is public comment. It's an opportunity for a person to speak up to 3 minutes. Participate, you've already called in Matt will go look through and call you out if you've raised your hand to speak, and we'll call you out by your last 3 digits of the number on the screen for the phone number. If you'd like to raise your hand, you can use *9 in order to speak. When you do speak, move to a quiet spot, if possible, and mute television and background noise. It'll be easier for us to understand, clearly hear you. When you do speak at the start, just go ahead and state your name and your address at the beginning of your comments. And again, you have 3 minutes.
If anyone would like to speak, please go ahead and raise their hand up. 1 second. Okay. Caller 340, if you want to go ahead and unmute, you can go ahead and speak.
Good evening. This is Dave McCall. I just want to let you guys know that we are on the call and available during the ag comment section. And my brother is also available, Nathan McCullough.
Thank you. Anyone else, from our listening public? Nobody else is indicating a desire to speak, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Dave, for showing up tonight. Next up is correspondence. Matt, we have airport operations for November.
Okay, you've got airport operations that were sent to you through the end of November. Again, as we get into the end of the year, obviously the numbers drop down a little bit. We had 6,100 ops in November, a little more in October. So we were down year to date compared to last year, which was really the best year we've had in a number of years. We were down just under 7% for the year to date. So I don't know if there's any questions on the operations numbers. All right, I'll transition over to the fuel usage. Again, through the end of November, and again, relatively consistent, though traditionally we have not, operations don't necessarily tie to the fuel. A little better November fuel sales, but we're down about 6% for the year to date through November. Is there any questions on the fuel sales? Okay. The third one is the 2023 airport hangar occupancy report. That actually is through the end of 23 through the year. So we finished up the year at 100% occupancy, and as of the end of the year, we had 44 persons on a waiting list. So obviously, solid year. You can't beat 100%, and the waiting list is very healthy. Are there any questions on the hangar occupancy report? All right, that's all I have on the correspondence, Mr. Chair.
Okay, next up is airport manager reports. What do we have there this month?
So after, if you recognize the agenda, will be slightly different under airport manager report. Normally I would, for the last decade or more, I would start out with the update on the environmental assessment, but as reported at the last meeting, that has been completed. I will note a couple of things. One, which was, we found out yesterday and was reported in MLive yesterday, that Pittsfield Township and the I'm going to get the name wrong, Community for Preserving the neighborhood nonprofit community that's been opposing the Runway environmental assessment. So they've filed a petition in December. They filed a petition for review in the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in D.C. Basically, we didn't receive notification because we're not a named respondent because we don't approve the EA. So the respondents were the FAA and MDOT because they're the signers of the EA. So what this petition is doing is basically requesting a review of the EA by the appropriate body. I don't know if that's the Court of Appeals or who, to determine that they followed all the rules and understanding and those type of things. So not a big surprise that has happened. This group had filed a similar administrative appeal to the Secretary of Transportation back in 2013 that didn't go anywhere. And if you read the article in the paper, I'll repeat kind of what I said in there, that this has obviously been a very scrutinized environmental assessment. I feel very comfortable that it meets all the criteria, and obviously the FAA and the state did as well by signing off and issuing the FONSI. So this will play out kind of completely separately from steps that we're doing moving forward and those type of things. Mark, you had a question specifically on that?
Yeah, two questions. Do you have an FAA file or case number for the 2013, and for the 2023, do you have a docket number?
I do have the information. I don't have it right here in front of me, Mark, but I can forward it to you.
That's fine.
Actually, the newspaper forwarded me the docket information for the 2023 stuff. The 2013 information, I have the original filing, from the attorney for the township and the committee. But again, that was not through a judicial process. That was through more of an administrative review process with the, requesting that the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, take action based on the type of things that the petitioners were asking for. So again, that was not truly a judicial process. So there's not a docket or case number or information on specifically on that.
Thank you.
Other questions on that? But I can forward you a copy of the docket stuff.
Since Michigan is a federal grant state, will MDOT be an intervening party or be party to the 23 case?
They are a party. They are considered a respondent to the party. So the filing was the respondents to the party were both the FAA and Michigan Department of Transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Other things. So the big question now is, now we have the EA in process. So we've done all the notifications that we've needed to do. What are the next steps for the city? So really, this is changing from an EA project to, a runway design project. And so kind of just give you an idea of the steps that we have to go through. And they're pretty significant. There's a lot of things that need to be done. So the first thing is runway design. So we're working with our airport engineer to prepare a scope of work to do the actual design of the project. And they get the scope together. They also have to put together the fees for that. Once that is done, then we actually have to retain the services of a second independent engineer to do what's called an independent fee examination, which is required by the FAA. And so they have a second engineer review the scope of work, review the hours, review the costs, and basically do their own calculations. And they have to be, both cost and in hours proposed, have to be within 10% of each other, of the two engineers. If they're not, then we have to work through that, where the differences are, and make sure everybody understands the scope and things are clear. So that process takes some time. Once the IFE, the independent fee examination, is done, then we can go ahead and submit it to the state for review. And the FAA also reviews it. And then if everything looks good, then we submit it to the Michigan Aeronautics Commission. They would do, every couple of months, they do what they call matters, which are basically approving their approval of issuing a sponsor contract or grant contract to the city. So once the MAC transfer is done, then we would actually see the sponsor contract from Aeronautics. And at that point, we would go ahead and, move it, get it scheduled in the council, so on and so forth. So we would also be negotiating and finalizing the contract documents for the engineering. So the first bite at the apple review by council would actually be when we take the grant contract to pay for the engineering design work, as well as the engineering contract. So we'll be working with city leadership as we get closer to that. This is a process that will be many months, so this is not something that's going to happen right away. But we'll be working with city leadership on, if city council wants to do anything special on it, if they want to have, public hearings or additional discussions or workshop or those type of things. So, but that's the steps in the process that we're working on. It's, when I look at what needs to be done and taking it even a step further. If that's approved by council, then the engineering design work has to get done. And, you know, specs are developed and those type of things. And then the big next step, or the kind of the final step, is the actual funding of the project. And again, that would all have to go back to council a second time, once the bids are received, to award contract for the actual construction, if it gets approved, as well as the grant funds to pay for the actual construction. So there's really four things that would get approved, kind of in two groups of two, you know, as this. Likely, realistically, from a construction perspective, and this is really driven more by the funding and financing from the FAA and aeronautics, we're probably, if it gets approved, we're probably talking calendar year 26 construction, not 25. Used to be when the state of Michigan received the funding from the FAA, they could put in and basically got all their funding for the year right up front. The FAA changed that a few years ago, where basically you've got to have the project ready to go and then submit for the funding. That submittal typically doesn't get made until May of each year, and it takes a couple of months for the FAA to provide the funding back to MDOT. MDOT won't actually issue the contract until they have the funding. So we would likely, you know, unless we manage to squeak in the fall of 25, it's more likely a 26 construction project. So just to give you an idea of the process, the steps that we're going through, now that the EA is done, you know, getting the project in line, getting it ready for presentation to council, and the steps that we need to go through for that. So just wanted to update everybody on you know, manage expectations and timing and those type of things for this process. A couple of other things. I'm sure many of you heard we had an aircraft accident on December 10th, where an aircraft basically landed short. Apparently sounds to may have caught a wind gust, a wind shear down. They landed just shy of the runway, kind of bounced up off the ground onto the runway. And then when they hit the runway the second time, they lost one side of the landing gear. So they were going pretty slow at that point. And once the wing dropped down on the left side where the landing gear was broken, when they spun around and went off the side of the runway a little bit. Three persons on board, nobody was injured. Pittsfield Township responded quickly, the fire department. Matt, congratulations, you guys did a great job out there overseeing things. And it sounded like our, you know, emergency protocols went pretty well. Chad, your guys at the tower did a great job as well, doing notifications and coordination. So thank you for both of those. FAA was out to do an investigation in the evening, and then once they cleared the scene, we were able to work with the local FBO and the owner, lift the aircraft up and tow it. It's a based aircraft, a Piper Meridian. It's based here in the Northwest Keys, and we towed it back hauled it back to the hangar and placed it in the hangar. So again, FAA will be, you know, doing their investigation. The one thing that we had to do is just as part of their investigation, because our VASI is at that end of the runway. They did take the VASI out of service for almost a day until we could get our contractor in to certify that the angles of the VASI were accurate and would not have attributed to the airport. And our VASIs were dead on and did not have any impact, didn't impact the issues with the accident at all. So, and once we provided that certification back from our contractor, they put the VASI back in service. So it was out of service for maybe 24 hours or less. Last two items that I have on my report. If you've been in the terminal building, we did finish over the holidays. We finished a reflooring work in the terminal, new carpeting, some new, luxury vinyl tile over in the lounge area. We did the offices of the two offices for Solo and the office for the rental car company, the back offices. So all everything on the first floor has been resurfaced recently. So it looks pretty good. Continue to make improvements where we can. And last, obviously, is just obviously we got hit with a good little bit of snow and some really cold weather, and that's got things creating some headaches for the guys. A lot of people flying today. We've got 2/3 of the runway is in great shape, and then the runway 6 end is rough because of the blowing snow and the winds, and there's just a hard pack of ice down there. So the FICON NOTAMs are good. The guys have been keeping up with that, dealing with a couple of gate issues that are snow and ice related as well. But other than that, it was pretty active today for a very, very cold day in January. Any questions under the report? All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Also, yeah, I appreciate the work for Pittsfield and also your crew and you, Matt, coming out on night of that accident. So, next up, committee reports. We'll start off with the retiring chief, sir.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. I do have, and I know we're talking about noise concerns and the voluntary noise abatement program and brochure further down on the agenda. I do have a couple complaints that I want to make you aware of, I guess, and just provide some of the details. It's probably best that we wait until it comes up on further down on the agenda. So other than those, a couple of things, I don't have anything else to report.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. The next is the discovery area. Matt and I have talked recently about some of the components of that discovery area. And if you don't remember, that's the idea of taking the area to the west side of the terminal building there and using it to build a little bit of a place where people could come, sit, show a little history of the airport, and maybe some STEM type activities for people to come by and look. But we have to start talking about looking at the two things that I think are essential, which is probably some seating in that area. If you remember from the diagrams before, we had some benches along the front where people stand now and look, and also about a shelter area, a small one, much similar to the size that we use for our picnics each year, but just a permanent establishment there as a start to this area. We'll see where that goes. We still a lot of discussion and see from what we're looking for and where we can go with that. Yeah, that's about it on discovery area. Any questions or comments?
Greg, I don't have any comments on that, but actually there was something, if we can go back to my committee report real quick, that I probably should have brought up. Everyone probably sees Patrick Gray on the screen there, and you're wondering who the heck is that guy. Matt mentioned it to Greg a little bit early before some of you got on to the Zoom call here. Pat is my deputy chief of police for Pittsfield Township. I am due to retire from the township in June. Pat is going to take over for me. So the supervisor and I wanted Pat to start attending your meetings because he will be our representative on the advisory committee when I leave in June. So he's just here simply to observe and listen in and try to get caught up in the issues and things of that nature. So he's ready to take over in June, and he'll be the main person that you'll see from Pittsfield Township from that point forward. So sorry, I should have mentioned that and forgot.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Outstanding.
I mentioned to the chief, once we get a little warmer weather, we'll have you out to the airport and give you a little tour and get you up to speed on the actual, get a feel for the actual facility a little more.
Well, that's fantastic. I appreciate that. I've been reviewing as much as I can, and I appreciate being able to be here tonight to do just that, just start getting up to speed with the project.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we're jumping to unfinished business, which the first one's coming up on the noise concern and the voluntary, the brochure about the noise abatement.
So, I sent out in the packet, I'm gonna put it up on the screen for those of you, in the committee that can ask, just so we can kind of talk and poke a little bit here. Let me. You guys see that in front of you? Okay. So this is the 2 pages of the noise abatement brochure that we had in front of you at the last meeting. We thought we had it nailed down pretty good, but we did send it out for kind of review and ask members to share it with, to review it in detail, share it with, people that are much smarter than I am when it comes to aviation and those type of things. And, we received some really good comments, some comments back from Member Perry as well as Member McNicholas. Chris Gordon, who many of you know, provided some really in-depth and wonderful comments. So what I've done is I've taken those comments and I've updated the document, and everything in yellow is new. There's a few things, I didn't send it back to our graphic designer yet, because I wanted to have a little more discussion this evening before we send it back out. And there's a few things on this document because what I had was a PDF file. So there's a few things I could not make changes to. One of the things, Mark, I know you had suggested about the logo and some minor changes to the logo, and we can incorporate those. I just couldn't do those with what I have. Melanie had some changes to these yellow boxes that are on this map. And again, the changes aren't changing the substance, but they're really more just consistent phraseology and those type of things. So those changes aren't made here. Again, I couldn't change this graphic, my graphic designer. And then the last thing, Mark, you had made a recommendation to add a 3rd line to the signage that we place out on the runway, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. I did include in the packet the emails with all these various comments, and most of them were pretty clear cut. Again, they really didn't change what we're doing, just went through and kind of clarified some things. Probably the biggest one, and it was a great catch by Chris Gordon, was the NBAA has changed their noise abatement procedures. So we've updated the information here, including the link to those approach and departure procedures. But again, the big question that I have is under the traffic pattern activity, and Chad, I hope you're listening in because I'll want to hear some your thoughts on this as well. Runway 6, the draft that we had before was right-hand patterns. The issue that came up was there are basically nowhere does it say we do a right-hand pattern, even though in general we do a right-hand pattern and we indicate it's preferred pattern for noise abatement, those type of things. But Chris raised a point, and I'm going to scroll down to it real quick here in his email that I thought was important. Right here, runway 6, right-hand pattern. So the VFR sectional chart nor the chart supplement specify right-hand pattern for runway 6. So we know when the tower's open, we do a right-hand pattern. But he raised, I think, probably some legitimate concerns that it's not published as a right-hand pattern. So I just wanted to get some feedback from members on, what they really feel we should be looking at here, if we should leave it as I changed it to a left-hand pattern, because again, when the tower's not open, the kind of the standard is a left-hand pattern. So again, just kind of looking for some feedback, on that. For those of you who are aviation people especially.
Hello, Matt. This is Chad. Am I good to speak here?
Yeah, you're good.
So I'm actually trying to look this up in the background, and sorry about the voice. I'm trying to get over a sickness here, but there is a standard traffic pattern, and it's not something that the FAA cares as in air traffic because we assign a pattern, but it is something that pilots care about for uncontrolled airports, so after hours at Ann Arbor and things like that. The biggest factor I see is if we're not publishing a deviation from what is standard, and we're just asking for them to do that. I do fully agree. If they're doing that at night when it's uncontrolled, there's no tower there. That is the issue. Is some pilots may come in that are unfamiliar, and they're expecting a specific pattern based on what I believe it's in the AIM, the Aeronautical Information Manual. And I'm trying to find it in the background, but not while I'm talking. If they come in expecting the standard pattern, and then do something, another pilot's doing something different, that's where I think the conflict will come in, and I assume that's what he's referencing there.
Yeah.
So I'll see if I can find that reference, Matt, and if I can, I will send that to you. But I mean, this is like 10 years ago in training. I remember something about standard pattern turns will be blank for pilots, and I got to find out where it says that.
Mark, you had your hand up?
Yes, just a little, sharing a little institutional memory here. This goes back a couple decades or even more. The airport manager, now retired Jim Hawley, working with Stuart Nelson, the airport or the chair of the advisory committee, who was also at the time was a Northwest airline captain. They met with community members for noise concerns, and with the left-hand pattern, which it used to be standard, went over the city in residential areas. And what Stuart recommended is we do a non-conventional right-hand turn when you're departing on 6. On 6, you do a right-hand pattern to keep over Avis Farms, where there is, at the time, and there weren't that many houses or residential. It was all industrial and warehouse. And that's the reason it went to it went to right back then. And so it was, the kind of the infancy of a noise abatement program, as well as the altitude changed as well, from I think it went up to 1,800 from 1,000 at the time. So those are two unofficial noise abatement programs that Mr. Hawley put in place many years ago. So I give you that as context of why it is today. But it's up to the group to figure out what it is we want to do. And I'd have certainly have Matt and Patrick be involved in whatever it is we do, because it will change the current noise abatement. So I'll just leave it at that.
I don't think there's any desire to change it from right-hand traffic. The issue, when the tower's open, I think the issue is there's nothing published that says right-hand traffic. And I think what you're going to find, Chad, is the standard is left-hand pattern. Even though, when the tower's open, we do a right-hand traffic pattern.
I'm still searching here in the background. When I find it, I'll raise my hand here. But so
Okay.
I'm understanding while I'm reading through this. Right now, the voluntary noise abatement procedure asks for what, and we're trying to change it to what reference patterns?
So the existing one says right-hand. We're fine with keeping it right-hand traffic pattern. And that's what That's actually what the current noise abatement program says is right-hand pattern. And again, we're not looking to change from that. The issue that Chris Gordon raised was he was just concerned that that may create some confusion for after hours because the standard, there's nothing in these chart supplements or the VFR charts that indicate that it's right-hand traffic at all times. It's just, you know, and the default apparently is a left-hand pattern.
Okay, thank you. I'll raise my hand here in a little bit.
Others, comments or inputs specifically
Yeah,
on that?
I have a comment on that. I think Chris's point is really valid, and I feel pretty strongly that we should not be advising our pilots to fly contrary to what's on the chart and in the chart supplement. And so the standard, unless it's called out otherwise, left-hand is a left-hand pattern. And for us to give contradictory instructions in our noise abatement brochure, I think would be a big mistake. It would leave us open to conflicts in the pattern. I don't know how you do it, but somebody at Rossetti on M52, they got right-hand traffic for their runway 36. I think it was for noise abatement for the church that's on the west side of 52 there. So you can do that, but it has to. We teach and we expect it to be called out on the sectional chart and in the chart supplement that, you know, left right-hand traffic for runway 6 would be called out, and I don't think we should advise otherwise and risk creating conflicts.
Yeah, so we could just, you know, so I kind of put some language together again that it's, you know, the direction is a left-hand pattern, but then, you know, we prefer right traffic is preferred for noise abatement, and then please request when the control tower is open, so you can see the language I put there. And obviously that's the standard for the tower anyways, is right traffic. So I just, you know, wanted to just make sure we were beating the hell out of this one. Just to make sure we're consistent and accurate. I tend to agree with you, Fred, that if the default is a left-hand pattern and we don't have anything published that says different, then we ought to at least list it here as left-hand pattern, but then, you know, encourage our people through the noise abatement to use right traffic, especially when the control tower's open. Because when the tower's open, they're going to be directing them to right-hand traffic anyways.
Usually.
Yeah.
Well, I think Mark's point is also valid. You know, back in a few decades ago, there was far less residential development under the traffic pattern on the south side of the runway. Now, there are lots of subdivisions down there compared to what's underneath the pattern on the right, on the north side of the runway. You know, it's all the south side businesses. That's my impression anyway, is that you disturb fewer people north of the runway than south. So I defer to Chad for what the controllers like to do. I think they like to keep everything south of the runway in general if they can.
I can speak on the controllers reference. If we're open, it really doesn't matter. And this is both from experience and preference. If we're open, it really doesn't matter what the traffic pattern is for the controllers, because it's gonna depend on what does their pattern look like. So if we're on runway 6, the reason a controller would favor right traffic would be you're eliminating the conflict from everybody coming in from the practice area. So for them, it's just easier. But they're allowed to flip left pattern, right pattern every 5 minutes if it's necessary for whatever they're doing. You know, next departure's going south, so we're going to use the other traffic pattern. When we're open, it's not really a factor. People come in, they have to listen to the controllers, or they're going to be brashered. Pilots are used to it. Enter left pattern, enter right pattern, make left close, make right close. That's no issue. The issue is simply when we're not open, whatever we do, we have to make sure we're not introducing any kind of confusion. It's hard enough to fly a plane at night, but whether they're in left or right it could be confusing. So somebody did mention an airport that they knew did it. It does look like on the sectional charts, if we're going to say right traffic, we have to go through an approval process and get RP for right pattern in the sectional charts for our airport. Obviously, we don't have that now, so that would be the first hiccup, I would say. And that is in the AIM, which is the Aeronautical Information Manual. It does differentiate that RP will be used on sectional charts for airports operating right pattern. Let me read one more snippet. Trying to get back to my computer. I got a little baby here too. So one little snippet about pattern is it is recommended. It is recommended that all aircraft enter the airport traffic pattern at one of the following altitudes listed below. The pattern should be maintained unless the traffic pattern is published in the chart supplement. And it says pilots are encouraged to use the standard traffic pattern as a note among everything else. It does talk about straight ins, which isn't relevant to this conversation, but ultimately the AIM's recommended pilots to encourage use of standard traffic pattern. That's what I've found so far. I'll keep looking, but again, if we are going to do right pattern after hours, it would have to be published in the chart supplement to reflect that.
The other thing that, I'll go ahead, Matt.
I'm not sure that this is a good time. It kind of involves some of the discussion that we're kind of raising now with pattern traffic and whatnot. So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and throw out the couple of complaints that I got. They involve a few of the issues that we're discussing. So one was on New Year's Day, actually, that we had one flight, and I have the flight number. I don't know if it's appropriate to give it over our meeting here, or I can send it to Matt or whomever for Michigan Flyers. 19 touch and goes in the same direction, and I believe this was runway 24. It wasn't really specified, and I thought we were talking about it, and it is listed in here. Pilots performing repetitive touch and go landings are encouraged to request a change in pattern direction from a control tower to help minimize noise impacts, and that probably would have helped that day. So a couple issues on that one. It was in the evening, and I don't remember, and it's not from what I can remember listed on the brochure here, the hours for, this is for flight training traffic, that I thought we were trying to specify or recommend a certain morning and evening where we would expect this traffic to occur, but outside of that, try to minimize it. And and I think it might have been the actual same plane. I had the number listed twice, that it was early in the morning, like at 6:30, and then in the evening hours, especially on New Year's Day. And I know that New Year's Day is not a major holiday that we had talked about over the summer, because that's when the majority of folks are out barbecuing and everything on Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, stuff like that. So it's a little bit unique, but this has been a warmer winter also, except this week. There was this one plane out on New Year's Day doing 19 touch and goes in the same pattern, and we got the number off of it. So I don't know if it's something that we can either add New Year's Day or all major holidays, or do we simply talk to that one pilot? Because I think he was involved in both, he or she was involved in both of the complaints. So I'm not sure how you want to handle that, or is there anything that we can add to this to help try to alleviate that issue?
Yeah, you can, Matt, send me the complaint. I was looking at the schedule just now to see what activity there was. There were 4 flights. They were all local. I'll certainly talk to the pilots involved in that. I don't remember, but we can go back and look at the METARs for that day. That may have been a day when the clouds were so low that people flying, it was hard to leave the area, but it was high enough to stay in the pattern at Ann Arbor, and that could be a contributing contributed to that. I see that, the 4 flights that day all did relatively large numbers of landings, which suggests to me that they were all staying in Ann Arbor doing touch and goes. But anyway, if you give me the information you've got, I'll figure out who to talk to, and I'll certainly talk to them about it.
Okay. I appreciate that, Fred. I'll send you the information that I have on it. So get that to you tomorrow.
Sure, and anything like that that comes up, please don't hesitate to forward it to me.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
The last couple of things, let's see.
Matt,
Go ahead, Mark.
before you leave the first page over in the NBAA section,
Yep, on the left.
yeah, you have the URL link, which is gonna be paper, so they'll have to type.
Right.
If you've got enough real estate, you might want to consider a QR code, because pilots will have their cell phones and the ability to get there easier with a lot less handling of a cell phone at the on the ramp or hold short line.
Would you consider that instead of the URL code?
It's up to you. I think
I
most
don't know how
pilots
small I can make
nowadays,
QR codes, so.
I think most pilots nowadays are accustomed to QR codes.
Okay. All right, yeah, I'll play with it. I'll let the graphics person, play with that. But I think we have it in another location, because actually I thought I had it somewhere else. Yeah, because even here on the next page and this link, they actually have separate links for arrival and departure procedures, of course. And so these links here and here, would you suggest, if we can do QR codes, would you suggest incorporating those at these 2 locations here?
Yeah, I think it would clean it up.
Okay.
And Matt, I have one more input on the left right-hand traffic, and I think I'm done with
Okay,
it.
go ahead, Chad.
All right, so it is in the AIM for anyone that wants to look it up. AIM 433 discusses traffic patterns. It does say that obviously what we're doing is correct overall. Recommended standard left-hand pattern. Again, it does talk about if we deviate from that, we need to use an RP. It does actually say right traffic patterns are not shown on airports with full-time towers. We don't have that, but if you know of one that's 24 hours and they don't have it on a chart, that is why. If you scroll down to where you have that in the pamphlet, I have a random suggestion that may be helpful, where it says runway 6 left-hand pattern. That's correct. That entire second sentence, if we just removed right traffic and said something to the effect of, so it says left-hand pattern, and then consider requesting alternative patterns when tower is open, or alternative left or right traffic when tower is open. Something like a suggestion, when the tower is open, ask for alternating your tower. And that's something where it sounds like Pittsfield would like that as well. I'm totally fine with that. I don't mind if they want to ask the controllers, hey, can we do some right traffic? It's good for them anyways. But that'll eliminate any kind of confusion with left or right. Somebody can't say, I remember seeing right. It just eliminate it and suggest alternating pattern when the tower's open.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You guys comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Taking a couple of notes here. So basically just have left-hand pattern, and then consider requesting alternating patterns when control tower is open.
Pretty much. Actually, what you have for runway 24 is almost perfect. Pilots performing repetitive touch and go landings are encouraged to request a change in pattern direction from the control tower to minimize noise impacts. I think you just copy and paste that on both of them. Okay. And I think that that's clear and a good suggestion.
I agree. I like that.
All right. Well, it's easy.
Matt, Chief Harshberger, below the 6 and the 2-4, there's procedures. And we briefly touched on holidays. And this may not be the time to go deep in the weeds on that subject of holidays, but we may want to circle back on that. That would be Matt and Patrick.
I agree. I think we all, and I know I've been on the advisory committee now for the last number of years, and it's rare actually that we get noise-related complaints and pattern traffic complaints in the wintertime, because folks tend to be more inside their homes and the windows closed and whatnot. And and I think we were really trying to focus on when we saw the bulk of flight traffic during the summertime, when it was creating the majority of complaints. So, but then this has been a very warm winter, so there have been opportunities for folks, I guess, to have their windows open or be outside. So it might be something for us to think about, just to simply say on all major holidays or something, but for something that I think we should think about and then maybe come back to.
And with the direction, Matt, if you had runway 6, left-hand pattern, runway 24, left-hand pattern, and then after that, have like an asterisk. And that asterisk would just cover both runways, and frankly, any runway for that matter, even if we had somebody on the grass strip doing pattern work or anything like that. We're not alternating patterns, but the asterisk, I think, would just cover everything. I think it's good for them to alter the pattern, period.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Mark, let me ask you for the, you had suggested putting in a third line under this sign. And you had used the NBA close-in procedures. Are you comfortable with, for turbines we're talking about only, are you comfortable with this language? Turbines use the NBAA recommended noise abatement procedures.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It'll cover both prop and turbine engines. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we answer, I'm just looking at my notes of things I want to get out, so, I think that was most it. We'll have to do, like I said, I'll do some, reworking. Things obviously are pretty tight on this. As I noted, the yellow boxes, what Melanie was looking for in these yellow boxes was basically, 1300, she added MSL, 1300 MSL, turn left or right, whichever applies, to 300 degrees, continue climb to 2500 MSL before turning on course. So again, it's really just, it's the same thing, other than it's just using phraseology that is more in line and those type of things. And the other thing that Melanie, she did some digging and made some contacts about, once the noise abatement procedure is in place, about getting it in as a chart supplement, which is where most pilots are gonna find it. So she did a great job. There's a lot to go on and to get it in the chart supplement, but we've got a little better handle on that. So I know we talked about reconsidering the holidays. I guess the question is timing. Do we want to I can make these changes that we talked about, and then we have kind of a final review in March. But if we're gonna continue to make changes, I mean, obviously we want to get it out there before the weather breaks. So if we're gonna change, if we're down to, it sounds to me like we're pretty much down to the question on holidays. I think I have most of the other information I need to get things done. So I don't know, again, do we want to add more holidays, or look at, since we haven't had a history of issues on the colder holidays, do we just try to address them individually, you know, if needed? So it doesn't matter to me to write the names of a few more holidays on here. But I'm thinking more so I'd like to make that decision now so we can get this finalized, because it's gonna take us a little bit of time to get it printed, get it distributed, those type of things.
You know, if you don't mind me, as I'm reading that recommended traffic pattern procedures, I mean, it says right in here, please be mindful of multiple touch and go landings, especially early morning and evening. And with the verbiage that we were talking about on the other page about requesting a change in pattern traffic.
Pattern traffic, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe that should do it. I mean, that would probably have eliminated the complaint coming in on New Year's Day. So I'm not sure that we need to add holidays at this point. We can always come back and do that at some point next year if we see that
Right.
this is an ongoing thing, that the winters are warmer and we're seeing more flight traffic and things of that nature. But if pilots are being aware of early morning, evening, if you're doing touch and goes, multiple, you need to ask for change in pattern, then that I think will resolve the issues for the most part.
Okay.
I agree. Well put.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and make these couple of language revisions, and I'll get with our graphic designer to make the changes. Because we'll also need to actually get signs printed up and installed, you know, out on the airfield as well. And so we will have you, obviously I'll send, once we get the final version back from the graphic designer, I'll send it out to you guys before we go to print, so allow for any additional comment. But that will be the plan at this point. And so with the goal of having this out as the weather warms up here in the spring. Okay. All right. Well, we beat that one to death, so give it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks for the work on that, Matt. I know it's been ongoing. But I think the product will get out, and I'm also in favor. Let's get it out there and in place, and then we can adjust as we need it going forward. Next up is under unfinished business. Yes, the airport agricultural activity proposal.
Before that, D2.
D2. Yes, airport. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, D2, the airport regulations. We have a subcommittee that's been meeting talking about that area.
Yes, we actually did not meet over the holidays, but we do have so this will be a real quick one. We do have our next meeting scheduled for later this month on January 26th. I think my members got the meeting notice on that. And then, so we'll continue to look at that and move forward. So nothing to report other than the upcoming meeting.
Thank you, sir. So now we'll move on to D3 that I pushed a little bit too early. This is the proposal from Broadview Farms on farming. We talked about last meeting and requested if there were some different ideas to please present those.
So, you know, I think you received, I think the Broadview Farms mailed out to the members, but we've also included the information in the packet. I'm going to go ahead again and bring it up on the screen. 1 second here. So basically what, and I met with the McCulloughs recently to go over this, and again, they're available if there's questions for discussion this evening. So what they've put together is a couple of different options that they've listed here. These are the fields that are fields. Field 1 is outside the fence, just for your references. That's the one that at this point that we've said, you know, continue to farm that. So the ones in question are fields 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They've thrown a couple of proposals out there. And obviously, you know, option 1 is what we currently have based on the previous decision that the committee made, which is just the field one, which is outside the fence. And that's kind of what's in place as of now. Option two would be taking fields 1, 2, 3, and 4 with fields 2, 3, and 4. I want to make sure I get this right. So the fields 2, 3, and 4, which are inside the fence, not be planted with corn. So just for everybody's, soybeans are typically, while they're still an attractant, they are less of attractant as corn is. They're a low crop, those type of things. They don't provide as much cover for, especially the larger mammals and those things. And so their option two is actually would, field one could kind of be corn or what they do outside the fence, and then 2, 3, and 4 would be a lower crop, most likely soys, but definitely not corn. One of the things in this option 2, 5, and 6 would not be planted with anything. And the purpose of that is to minimize the runway attractants. So if there's no crops to the south of the runway in fields 5 and 6, then there's less attractant for deer or other large mammals, but primarily deer, to cross from the groups of fields at 2, 3, and 4 down to fields 5 and 6. So that was their option 2. And then option 3 would basically be the same as option 2, but getting rid of the field number 4. So it would basically be most likely corn in field 1, and then 2 and 3 would not be corn. They would be another crop, again, most likely soys. But it just kind of cleans up, again, moves the attractant a little farther away from the runways, both the turf and the primary. Continues to eliminate fields 5 and 6 for cross traffic as well. And then their last option is basically going back to what we had done previously prior to making the change, where they would potentially they would farm all of the areas. So really just kind of resetting it back to what 2023 was. So you all received packets, so I guess at this point we'll throw it out there for discussions or conversations, and if we have questions, I'm sure the McCulloughs be happy to provide any input we can.
Matt, I know the runway design is not even begun yet. Do you anticipate a change in the fence line in that 1, 2, 3 area?
Let me just. The north-south fence likely won't change. Right now, that fence is between field 1 and field 2. So that fence location probably won't change. Where it may pop out a little bit is, as we get into the runway safety area and the actual approach, we may extend that a little farther to the southeast, the fence line there. Does that make sense?
And that was, I'm looking at the aerial now. What fields where it would change in the southeast area?
So really the fence line, which again runs between field 1 and field 2 right now,
right,
north-south.
Mm-hmm.
When it gets down, it kind of cuts on an angle, and you can see it really follows the angle at field 2 there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it hits the wooded area, and then it works its way back up. So really, if the runway project goes, you're going to see a bit of field 3 cut off. The south part of field 3 would be cut off. And kind of the lower, what I'll call the boot of field 2, would be cut off, and possibly even a little bit of the field, the little nub at the bottom, the southeast corner of field 1, that may be impacted by the fence. That little nub of field 1 may be impacted by the fence change.
Okay. Yeah, I only bring that up because, if there's capital improvements in that fence line, it's gonna kind of be changed. Whatever you come up with whatever's gonna be tillable, you gotta probably account for a change in the fence line.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't anticipate a significant change, just really at the end of the runway and the runway safety area.
Very good.
Yeah, thanks. So it seems like they're recommending options 2 or 3 as sort of trying it out this year, seeing how a different prop arrangement inside the fence might work, being able to evaluate it for the future years. And then, of course, there's a little bit of additional revenue that would be coming in. I would certainly defer to others on the screen that I find would have much more expertise in this area. To me, that there is some logic, though, in that, in terms of being able to see what a change in crops might do, what the impact might be on wildlife, and also the additional revenue potentially could be used to assist in paying for additional fence repairs, which is something that I know is kind of one of the top recommendations in the report to deter deter deer. So just curious what reactions are on that.
Let me throw out, after our last meeting, I did have staff go out and take a look at the condition of the fence and the culverts. And as I had thought, the culverts actually had been, after we received the report, we had staff go out and basically put rebar type of gratings over the end of the culverts. And that was done, and I know we had a little conversation of this with McCullough the other day, where there's a culvert that runs under the end of the runway safety area, and there was some question that that culvert discharges outside of the fence, which is consistent with what McCullough said, but we actually do have, and that's a smaller culvert as compared to the one to the north, but staff did at that time, when we did the one to the north, they also included a rebar type of grading on the intake side of that culvert. So those culverts are protected from mammals. Maybe a smaller coyote could get through, but definitely not deer. They also did a full inspection of the fence, and there are some areas where the fence has been undermined, where an animal has burrowed underneath it. But there's no gaps in the fence. There's no damage to the fence. There's no trees falling and laying on the fence. And so staff will be moving forward to do a better job of clearing the areas on either side of the fence, just to keep that vegetation from growing on there. But so the issue that you're referring to in regards to repairs to the fence, I wouldn't classify them as repairs to the fence as much as maybe expanding the height or some of the things that are recommended. How they recommend you put 45-degree angles and dig it into the ground and those type of things. So, but I just wanted to, I hadn't shared that with the committee, but we did have a full kind of inspection of the full perimeter of the fence after our last meeting. So, yeah, really the question is, if we do make a change, again, I think you've seen that we very specifically have kind of spelled out to the tenants. So we just would need to be cognizant of that. And, if we say, we're going to use some of those extra funds to continue to make improvements to the fence, or, do we look at making an adjustment to the rates, or how we handle that? I'd be looking for direction from this committee as a recommendation on if we do make a change from what the committee has already approved, just kind of make a recommendation on how we want it, because we were very specific in the letter that went out to the tenants with a rate increase, and it was very specific on what, why we were doing what we were doing, and what the expected cost was going to be, and what the specific percentage of the rate increase was related to these changes in ag activity.
Hey, Matt, I have a question for you.
Yep.
What could we do to count the wildlife, to get a census of the wildlife? I think we're on the verge of making a change, and I like it. But how will we know if we made a difference? Is there any data anywhere to make a count in the future and compare it to some count in the past or anything like that?
Probably the easiest would be a deer count, and that is something that we have some data on from because the USDA, when they've been out, the 2 times that they've been out, they've actually set up wildlife cameras and have basically taken account of deer population inside the fence prior to their cull, and then so they knew that there was a dozen deer inside the fence from, they typically would come in and they would put in wildlife cameras and bait stations, which they can legally do. And so they're drawing the deer to the cameras, and so they can identify deer, and they come up with a count. So they know when they come in 2 weeks later for the cull, they kind of roughly know how many they should be expecting to see, and when they're doing their elimination. Obviously, that there's flexibility to that, but I think most of the deer, from what we see, once they get in, they stay in. It's relatively safe. It's protected. There's a food source, water source. It's a pretty good place to be. To stay out of the way of the aircraft. But so that would give us some idea. The other thing that we could look at if we wanted to, with the possibility of putting in some sort of wildlife cameras ourselves to monitor that. I don't know what the expense of that would be, or the time commitment to do that and track that. But that's, really the best way to get reasonably accurate information. But again, that's mostly going to be, mammals. So it's going to be deer, coyotes, probably, primarily.
I think I like, if we have deer camera data from the past, that's probably good enough. So I think comparing, counting incidents would be not much data and kind of a grim way to go about pointing out that we made a difference. But we have past deer counts, that's great.
I mean, we could use, like I said, we could bring, and it's practical to do it. We could bring the USDA. They're not, the process that they do, the call that they do is not unreasonable price-wise. It's a few $1,000s, and, that includes not only the wildlife cams they put in, the baiting stations, and then typically 1 or 2 nights for the call. And then again, they remove everything. So, if we had them in, I think in October of this year, or somewhere around there. If we bring them in next fall. I mean, we've got, similar type of years. We could get comparison to what type of numbers they're seeing and get a feel for, the plantings that we did this year to see, what kind of change there was over the last 12 months.
So I guess it comes down, Matt, what we need out of here for us.
So really what I'd be looking for, if there is a desire to change over what we approved, I think last March, would basically be, a motion to, reconsider that, or a motion, we're not super formal, we're an advisory committee, we're not super formal when it comes to, Robert's Rules of Orders, but, if we take an action to change to a different option, if it's option 1, 2, 3, whatever, the committee wants to do, that we have laid out in front of us, here, we will just look for a motion and a second for that and take a vote on that. And if there's a majority interest to make a change and that motion passes, then that's what we'll implement. If there's not, if it doesn't pass, then we'll stick with what we've got and move forward.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider with either option 2 or 3.
I want more definitive now, either option 2 or 3, which one? Put you on the spot.
I would say option 3. Just because that grass runway, I love the grass runway, and that option 3 would take field 4 out of the
mix. Well, is there a second to that?
I'll second that. I like that.
Any discussion before we vote? I guess I'll state now, I'm still quite comfortable with the decision we made back in March. Just FYI on that. I think it was a good one. Might not be popular, but I think it was a good one for us to start with. But with the motion, we'll vote on the motion. All in favor?
I'd like discussion.
Yep.
I'm comfortable with whatever the majority feels is best for safety. But we have another stakeholder here, and that's Pittsfield Township, because they run the emergency service. Do you know what the approximate occurrences or incidents have been where Matt, with your staff, has had to come to the site because of a bird strike, animal strike, or whatever, and what your investigations may have indicated?
And I'm going off simply my recall, and Deputy Chief Gray may have better recall than I, and I'm going back only during my tenure here at Pittsfield Township, which would be about 15 years. I think, and Matt Solhanick probably would know or remember as well or better than both of us. So I thought we had 1 or 2. That one involved a deer that I can't remember if it actually struck the plane or caused the pilot to do some type of turn or emergency maneuver. And then another one, I thought there was some type of bird-related situation more toward the end of 2-4. And Matt or Deputy Chief Gray, I'm not sure if you can help me with my recall.
So the only incident that I recall is the deer that was on the we're talking about the grass runway, correct?
Yeah, on any runway, I think is.
Okay, on any runway. Excuse me. I do recall an incident with a deer crossing, but I agree with you. I don't believe that there was actually a collision. As far as the bird is concerned, I may not have heard about it if you recall it, but no, I'm sorry, I can't be more helpful than that.
We can go back and check, and I can get you that information. I would just have to pull it up.
Yeah,
we've had 2. I mean, I've been here 17 years. We've had 2 deer strikes where a deer actually had an air crash drop. One was just recently, this last October, and then the other one was 8, 9, 10 years ago, maybe. And, we've had an occasional bird strike, but nothing that I recall required, I think a couple of bird strikes we've had, they've come around and landed and just to check for any damage. I don't think probably anything that on the bird side that would have brought public safety out. My guess is you guys were probably out for that first deer strike. I don't think you guys were out in the one that happened this fall, and I think it was October. Yeah, so I would say, Mark, from my recollection, the response for wildlife activities from Pittsfield Public Safety has been very, very minimal. I don't think they've been brought out or had calls for that purpose.
When USDA came out and did their study,
Yeah.
did they prioritize any of the fields that were higher risk than others?
No, they didn't look at it at that level. Just looking for my second. You know, their recommendation, second, I have it here. You know, their recommendation was to, it would always be to eliminate agriculture at an airport.
Well,
That's going to be their primary goal, would be to eliminate ag. They did indicate in the report about changing crops to less, I think they indicated in there that if you're going to have crops in there, that soys are the best option. Yeah, I actually just ran across the report. So 2014 was the first, or the deer strike, the first one that has happened since I had been here, and then the one this last October. Hang on 1 second. But in regards to saying, hey, which fields you should, say, I'd get rid of this one first. So their report said, I'll read it, I have right here, look into phasing out agriculture on airport property. Start with agriculture inside the airport operations area and move to outside airport operations when possible. Corn should never be planted inside the airport operations area. If agriculture continues, soybeans are the least attractive of the conventional agricultural products. Immediately upon harvest, the farmer should be required to plow the field under to cover as much of the leftover beans as possible. So that's right out of the wildlife hazard assessment. So, again, their default is no agriculture at airports, but they're also realistic to know that for many airports, that's an important revenue source and those type of things. So, their recommendation was looking to phasing out agriculture on airport property, starting with agriculture inside the airport operations area and moving to outside if and when possible.
One last question. In the ALP, former supervisor, I think it was Jim
Walters.
Wagner?
Walters.
He had the airport consider getting a portion of that field 1 and possibly 2 designated as non-airport revenue land to be set aside. I think Jim wanted to do sports fields for his constituents. And does that non-revenue area, does it go into 3 or 2, I guess? No, 3. Does it go into 2 and would our decision on whatever it might be with ag, inside or outside, or both, does that have any impact on the?
It doesn't, for a couple of reasons. So, believe it or not, agriculture is considered an airport activity. So it does not have to be performed in a non-revenue area. And that area you're talking about, Mark, was designated on the airport layout plan. And at the time, you know, and this predates me, but the idea was Pittsfield Township was looking for soccer fields, and asked the airport to designate an area, you know, for a non-revenue generation. I'm going to share my screen here, Mark, because I pulled up the ALP. So just we can show. See if I can do this again. It does look like it extends into both 1 and 2. Can you see the map of the airport, you guys?
Yes.
Okay. So the area that Mark's talking about is over here. This is Laura Road running up and down. And this square here, if you can see my outline of my cursor, is an area that's designated on our ALP as a non-revenue, non-aviation revenue area. So that is basically allows for non-airport related activities in that area. There's still a process that you'd have to go through with the FAA to get release on that if you wanted to do something there. But that's what that was there, and it was requested at Pittsfield Township by Jim Walters, the supervisor at the time. And their idea was soccer fields. Obviously, that never materialized. It really wouldn't impact because even if we did decide to do something there, that would impact obviously both fields and 1 and 2 if you use the whole area for something.
Thank you.
Erica, you've patiently had your hand up.
For sure. Yeah, and I think a few of the things I was gonna ask or discuss have already been raised. I do know that we have McCullough's online, and I wondered if we wanted to give them an opportunity to say something as well. You know, I think in terms of, you know, if this does move forward, I do think it might be useful to try to monitor wildlife in an additional way. We've talked about deer and birds, and I think it would be, I know that cameras are really pretty inexpensive these days, and being able to start tracking some of that data, I think would be helpful, especially if we're beginning to evaluate what's the difference between grasses that we're now planting, what type of birds are they attracting versus the soybeans, you know, and then obviously the corn would be entirely outside of the airport grounds. And so I think one of the benefits of taking this approach is we don't really have any data right now as to know what a different crop what the impact of that might be within the airport. Maybe that's we wouldn't see particularly different. It wouldn't be a particularly different attractant than, let's say, the grasses that we're planting. I don't know, or maybe it is. I think it would be helpful to have some of that information to inform future years in terms of the decision making that needs to happen. But I do think it might be nice to just give a minute or two to be able to ask if others are interested in hearing from them around how they might help monitoring.
One question.
Second, I just gotta look it up.
The October event. So there was no farming this fiscal year, right? So, but so is it true that there weren't any crops there this past October when there was the deer event? I know you said they tend to stay in the fence, but
no, the crops were there at this time. What happened in October, the crops were still on the ground when the deer incidents occurred.
Okay,
I don't know. I'll ask David or Nathan, whoever wants to speak. I'm going to have you on mute if you're there. David or Nathan?
Hi, I'm here. This is David
Okay.
McCullough.
And David, you still had crop. You pulled crops out what in that field? What, November?
Yeah, I think it was early November this year
Yeah.
when we, harvested the soybeans and the corn. And we did our best to plow under the fodder, the corn debris, and soybean debris as quickly as we could. But we had a very wet harvest, which delayed that a little bit more than we typically like to do. But I wanted to thank everybody for reconsidering this. I know it's a big decision for the airport. I hope you appreciate the proposal we put together. We feel that, option 2 or option 3 would definitely be appropriate middle ground, and would also give the grounds crew an opportunity, to get some native grasses seeded in the fields that are not going to be farmed on a smaller scale. Because I do feel that if you go to seed 100 acres inside the grounds is no small feat to get those established, and this might give everybody an opportunity to see the benefits and disadvantages of those options.
Any committee members have any questions specifically for the McCulloughs?
If it's all right, I also wanted to, real quick, I just wanted to mention too that just a reminder that every acre that is kept into production inside the grounds does generate income not only for the airport but also for Pittsfield Township in about really similar amounts in tax revenue to Pittsfield Township, which might help mitigate any costs that they have for calls of service.
We do like to share that your taxes are more than your rent is, so.
They are, yes.
All right, thank you, David.
Any more discussion on the motion that we have right now to push for, I think, option 3?
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favor of option 3. When we put it last spring, the option seemed to be, well, do we ignore the USDA's recommendation or not? And that seemed an obvious choice to me. Now I'm grateful that the McCulloughs have given us some proposals and are working with us on it. And I like the idea, just it pleases me that there's sort of a community aspect to what goes on the airport grounds, and it's not in some sense sterilized for aviation. That's one thing that comes to my mind. But I'm strongly in favor of keeping agriculture going under these new conditions as a good faith proposal to see if we can make effective changes.
Mr. Chair, I will just mention it's not a question per se, but if the board or if the committee does recommend a change, I would ask that we have a discussion, and it can be at our next meeting, just about what notifications or how we handle the basically the financial changes related to the tenants and the rates for the T hangars.
That's one thing. Matt, do you think that, let's say the majority are in favor, do we need to look at subcommittee to talk about that before then, or do you just want to wait till the meeting?
I think I think people know the issue, and I hope I can provide some specific numbers just so they know what the change would be and those type of things ahead of time. But I think we can just have a discussion on it and make a determination on it at the next meeting.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion to go with option 3 of fields 1, 2, 3 going forward? Okay, let's vote. So all in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? I'll give my one opposed. And that's it.
Okay, motion passed. I had 5-1. So. All right, we'll go ahead and get working on those changes with the McCulloughs, and then again at the next meeting I'll just throw an item just for conversation, just so we have an idea of what change, if any, we're going to do related to the revenue that we've generated on that. So
excellent. So now we're up to new business. New business is the Runway Safety Extension Project Environmental Assessment Summary. What do we have there, Matt?
Yeah, I'm gonna throw it up here. I'm gonna run through it pretty quick. I mean, you guys have or have access to the documents. And obviously I'm not gonna cover the whole thing. Let's see if I can. One second here. Manage to close something that I didn't want to close. So what I pulled out was some excerpts, really the purpose and need from the document, and then a couple of maps showing the alternatives considered. And 1 second, I'm almost there. Okay, let's see now if I can share this. I had it up and ready to go, and then I'm going to blame this on Mark. When I pulled up the ALP, I closed it accidentally. So you should see a document in front of you. It says purpose and need. So first of all, highlighted at the top is the link. The entire document is available at the city's website. If you want to download it, we've broken it into small sections for review. The actual EA is not a terribly long document. It's all the appendixes and public comments, response to comments, those type of things that make it 3,600 pages long. But there's a lot of good information in those appendixes and comments and those type of things. So really, the purpose and need, I'm just gonna kind of blow through these pages, are really general information about the airport, the area, talks about the runway, what we have facilities wise, lighting systems, those type of things. This is our current setup. This map shows the current setup, and again, you get a relative feel for where the neighborhood associate, the Stonebridge community is, and then farther to the south, there's some residential down here, waterways and light neighborhoods. These just kind of talk about some state block grants and review process. These are the proposed actions that really kind of get into the 720-foot extension, 150-foot shift, which we would take off the end near State Road and put down at the end closest to Lore, to address some of the issues that we have at that end of the runway with proximity to State Road, the line of sight issue, those things. So if the runway is extended, then we're extending the taxiway alpha that runs parallel to that. We would relocate taxiway alpha 1, which is up by State Road, again, because we're literally removing 150 feet of taxiway there. It's not leaving it and displacing the threshold. It's actually removing that 150 feet of pavement. So we would have a new connector, which would address the line of sight issue from the tower. That alpha 1 would then be in line with the tower. Across from there is the Delta taxiway that goes to the southeast tees. That would also be reconfigured for a couple purposes. One, because we moved the runway down 150 feet, but both Alpha 1 and Delta are non-compliance in regards to the current design from the FAA. They don't meet the existing design standards, so we would bring those up to the current design standards. And then the FAA has some things. They have basically one piece of equipment at the airport, a reel at the end of runway 6 that would be relocated. And then they'll get into the purpose and need, and this really is what drives it. And the key, the reporter yesterday when I was talking to him about the petition, he asked me, what's the advantage? And really, what the FAA is looking to accomplish here is utilizing aircraft, our critical aircraft, in this case, a B-2 aircraft, which is our current critical aircraft, allowing them to be utilized at their peak efficiency. And then there's a lot of other smaller issues that we would be addressing with that. We talked about some of the configurations that aren't meet current standards. And we've got what we have said from day one are the local safety issues. So we've got the proximity to state road, the non-conforming obstruction clearance surface, the overrun issues that we've had from time to time at the airport that would be addressed. So this gets into those type of things. Talks about this is a typical critical aircraft. This is a King Air, which is our most common aircraft in our critical design category. Talks about the justification study. This gets into what we are. We're a B2, so the category B is based on approach speeds of the aircraft, and B2, Group 2, is a wingspan size. And again, we're B2 currently. We would be B2 if the runway project goes forward. This is some typical aircraft that fly at the airport. These are annual operations based on actual data, and then these are forecasts projected moving forward. And these forecasts are not our forecasts. These are based on the FAA and their TFMSC database and those type of things. So once the purpose and need was developed, we have, this is a required environmental review, and these are traffic summaries, you know, history of the airport in regards to the type of operations, based aircraft, and then projected moving forward. So then the process was we look at alternatives. So this was the first alternative, and again, there's descriptions of each of these, but I'm a big fan of, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So this was basically extending the end of the runway to the northeast, the 720-foot addition, and what the impact would be. So we'd have a new Alpha 1, we'd have to put in a new Delta taxiway. The entire 720 feet would go, obviously, it would require the relocation of State Street. And this proposes two different options. One running straight north up to Ellsworth Road, and the other is kind of a bell curve around back to the intersection of Ellsworth and where State is now at the traffic circle. So this is one of the options. This wouldn't deal with a line of sight issue, and we can get into the pluses or minuses of each. Those are in the documents, the pros and cons, and there's a chart at the end. The second option, which is what we call the preferred alternative, is what we're proposing. The 720 feet addition plus the 150-foot shift down here, eliminating this area in red, which is the Alpha taxiway, the current Delta, and the 150 feet, a new Delta taxiway, a new Alpha 1, and then again, you'd have a combined 720 plus the 150, so 870 feet of new pavement down here, extension of taxiway Alpha, and then the new taxiway Alpha 4 at the end of the runway. Option 3 is splitting the two, where we put a little bit of each end. And so down here was basically a 360-foot extension down here. So you'd have a new Alpha, Alpha 4, and a 360-foot extension here. And then a 360-foot extension at this end, new Alpha 1, new Delta. It would still require the relocation of State Street. And then this is a chart that basically talks about the different summaries. So one is the no action alternative, and then the three alternative 1, 2, and 3 that we just graphically provided you. And this is what they're looking at in regards to the categories. Doesn't meet the purpose and need of the project as shown in that first section. And then the technical feasibility. What issues do we create? What issues do we solve? Those type of things with each of the different options. And then environmental impacts, which ones have higher environmental impacts than the others. And then economic feasibility. They actually do an estimated cost for the different alternatives, and to see what the, you know, what the economic feasibility of these are. We, and then the selection of the preferred alternatives. This last is a table, and this is really kind of the meat of the environmental assessment on what it shows, because these are identifying, if we move forward with the preferred alternative, these are the different environmental factors and the different things that they would be looking for. You know, so there's a couple of important ones. One is the protection of the wetlands. The layout that we have, the preferred alternative, should avoid any regulated wetlands, but they talk about how to protect those and those type of things during construction, and but the design should be able to avoid impacting the wetlands. We do know we're going to have to do get a floodplain permit. You know, we've known that from the very beginning on that, and we would have to do what they call a corresponding cut. So what part of the floodplain upstream of the runway culvert we would impact, because we're going to have to build up for the Alpha Taxiway into the floodplain a little bit. We have to basically create the same amount of capacity upstream, so the floodplain capacity does not change upstream of that culvert. A lot of the rest of these are basically what we would call BMPs, best management practices, and you can go through them. I'm not going to cover them all, but this is a chart that's in the document, and again, it just talks about the different things that should be looked at. You know, one of the things I think is in here, you know, because we work with the Audubon Society for nesting habitat and those type of things. There's a practice of proposed mitigation in here about, you know, coordinating when we work in that area to wait till after the nesting habitat of the Henslow sparrow and those type of things. So these are all the types of things that are in this mitigation summary, and again, this is part of the document. So not looking for any action today from you, but I wanted to just give you a taste of the document, kind of a quick summary, make sure you knew where to view the document. You don't want me emailing it to you, unless you do, I'll be happy to do that. But it's available to you at the airport website. That link that's on the top of that summary, I added in there. You know, I recommend that you take, you take a nice glass of wine and your reading glasses, and you sit down and you go through the document. Some of the important things in the appendices, obviously, are the noise and air quality studies, the actual runway justification study that was done initially, that's in there. Those really are, those are going to be beneficial to understand, but please feel free. There's all sorts of fun and exciting stuff about wetlands and birds and flora and fauna and economic development and traffic and all sorts of crazy stuff. But basically what we would, what I'd be looking for from the committee, if it's at the next meeting, that we've had an opportunity to review it. You bring up comments, questions, those type of things. The goal is, if the committee is satisfied with the EA, the goal would be at some point a recommendation to accept the EA and encourage council to move forward with the project. That's really kind of what we'd be looking at, what kind of recommendation we'd be looking at from the committee, if that meets what the committee is interested in doing. So, questions on the summary?
Excellent.
Pat, you jumped in right at the best time, where Matt's going to dump a 3,600 page document in your lap.
Already have.
Can't wait.
So again, no action is needed tonight. I just wanted to, we got the document. I wanted to give you a summary on it and just kind of let you know in the long run what the target, at least from my perspective, what the target for the committee would be. Obviously, you guys have the ability to make a decision on what your recommendation, if any, is going to be. But again, just to give you some structure based on what I'd be looking for. So.
Good deal. Thanks, Matt. Okay, that puts us on to under new businesses, election of the officers for 2024.
So normally I take over on this item of the agenda, and not that I don't take over on a lot of stuff, so I apologize for that. But so we have two positions open. We have the chair and the vice chair, and we'd be looking at this point, we would open the floor for a nomination of a chair, if anybody would like to make such a nomination. And this would be for the calendar year 2024. Mark, I can't tell if you're speaking or not. You're mute, so. There you go.
Since Greg's not speaking, I nominate Greg to be reappointed to the chair of the committee.
Second.
Okay. Any other nominations? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Fred. Do you have something?
I was seconding the nomination.
Any other nominations for the position of chair? And is there a nomination to, let me try this again. Is there a motion to close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Member Ferris as the chair for 2024?
Move to close the nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Chairman Ferris.
I second that motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Correct.
Congratulations, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, that's what and congratulations. I will never, nor will I speak, nor accept.
So the next step would be a nomination of a vice chair. So at this point, is there any nominations for the position of vice chair? Melanie is the current.
Melanie is the current?
Yeah.
Can we have discussion on that, or is that after you nominate?
Typically, you would nominate and then have discussion.
Is Melanie here?
She's not. She's actually going to miss, I think, this meeting and possibly next. I think she's in Africa, if I recall.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, the only thing I'll say is that I am super busy at work, so please don't even think about it. Therefore, I think I'll nominate Nell.
Hey.
As an old timer. I think she has been around the airport more than anybody. Grew up here.
She started very young.
I was gonna move to keep Melanie.
So we have a nomination of Nell for vice chair. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, I'd look for a motion to close the nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Nell as vice chair. Is there such a motion?
I'll move.
So move.
And I'll second, Fred.
I'm sorry, who moved it?
I did.
Oh, thanks, Fred. And Greg seconded. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hey.
Opposed? Congratulations, Nell.
Thanks,
The
guys.
leadership position. We're gonna double your pay as a member. So.
Outstanding.
All right, well, we have Chair Ferris and Vice Chair Nell Faulkner. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. So next up, we'll do closing public comments. This opportunity for people to speak again up to 3 minutes. Matt will, once you raise your hand, *9. Matt will call you out by your last 3-digit numbers, and then if you just move to a quiet spot and speak and state your name and address at the beginning, and again, you got 3 minutes.
Anyone who would like to, hang on a second.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, go ahead, David.
This is David McCall with Broadview Farms. I know it's a long meeting. I just wanted to thank everybody for the motion and the vote tonight to continue some agricultural activity inside the grounds. We very much appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you guys in the coming years. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Any other public comment? Anyone else interested in speaking? Nobody else is indicating, Mr. Chair, so we'll let you move forward.
All right, so just to bring up our next meeting, actually probably did that out of order now I'm looking at it. The next meeting is Wednesday, October 20th, 2024, 5:15.
Or March 20th.
What did I say?
October.
Wow. I don't know where I got October from that.
At least that's what I heard. Maybe
That's why ATC, the tower, loves me when I talk, because who knows? Anyway, so March 20th, 2024, 5:15. Give Matt a call if possible, if you're not going to be able to attend that meeting.
That's in person, right?
That one is still electronic. It's our May meeting that's in person.
Okay. Oh, yeah, 'cause it's warmer. Yeah.
Mr. Waterman. Excellent. Yeah, all you did public comments, so I think now we look for a motion for adjourn, unless there's anything else.
What you do? You want to get on the meeting? You want to go to the meeting?
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor for adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. See you March 20th. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.